Hi, John with padprinters.com. We are talking about cliche making. In previous video we did an overview of the exposure unit, the different types of films in a second video, and we went through the 2 exposures that you need to do in a third video. This is the 4th video where we're talking about developing. So we're going to assume that this cliche has been exposed using the process I discussed in the previous video. So we would have the developer. This is the alcohol developer that we have. This developer is 98% pure denatured ethyl alcohol with 2% kerosene. So it's different than the denatured alcohol solvent you can buy at Lowe's or Builder Square, because that stuff typically is diluted by maybe 40% or more with water. So it's not going to be active enough to develop your cliches very well. So there's a reason that stuff costs $16 a liter, because it's that pure, and that's what you need to use. If you're using water, obviously you'd be using water in the same process here. So I would pour this in to a Rubbermaid bin. This is a typical Sterilite or Rubbermaid bin with a top. If you want to, you can dilute this up to 15% with distilled water, not tap water. You don't want to use tap water, especially in a city, because municipalities add chlorine and fluoride and things like that that can cause problems when you're developing the cliche. So if you're going to dilute developer 15%, use distilled water. I only pour enough in so that once I put the cliche in here, I'm covering the cliche, and I would just swish it back and forth here for a little bit. So you only need maybe 1/4 of an inch of developer in the bottom of this tray to do a cliche. So I throw it in, and it should be a 2-minute developing process. I usually let it sit for about 30 seconds. And then I take a paint pad, make sure the paint pad is well saturated with developer, and then I just use very, very light. I don't use any pressure. I'm not scrubbing. All I'm doing is really floating this back and forth across the surface of the cliche, and that's just to remove the unexposed polymer from the image area. So once 2 minutes is up, I take the cliche that I have developed and shake it off a little bit, let it drip as much as possible, and then I'll just lay it on some paper towel. You don't want to wipe it, because that would be bad for the image area. So I lay it on the paper towel, and then I use another one over the top, and I just pat it dry to remove the excess developer from it. Then once you hit it to that point, you can put it back in your exposure unit for the post exposure, which is very important because you're using the temperature or the heat from the bulbs to evaporate any remaining developer or water from the cliche. And you're also using the UV lights to harden the areas of the image that had not previously been exposed, so they're not hard yet. If you don't do the post exposure, your cliche will wear out very, very quickly. So it's important you do this. You don't need vacuum. All you need to do is put your cliche in there, and you can set the timer for maximum, which is on this one's 9 minutes 59 seconds, and do 3 of those exposures for 30 minutes of post exposure recommended by the cliche manufacturer. Once you get to that point, you should be ready to go on to press. And in my final video here in the series, I'll go through some of the things I do for a little bit of quality control to make sure my cliche looks good. Thanks.